So hi everybody, good afternoon wherever you are. Thank you for joining the session and joining and staying in the IT industry. Now meets Deterring Women. Before we talk about why we talk about this, just a little bit about myself in case you haven't met me before. My name is Areti. I'm the head of professional services for Telefonica Tech and specifically the Microsoft Biz Apps business unit within Telefonica Tech. I look after the delivery teams that work with professional services clients. I used to be myself part of a delivery team not too long ago before I became head of delivery, and very much a geek, very much loving where we are going with the platform these kind of next few months. It's going to be very interesting, I think. We're going through a shift with AI, so that's really, really good, and I'll come back and talk about that on a future VRT. But for today, I'm talking a little bit more about the other thing that I do, which is be a women in tech advocate. And I try and talk about this as much as anyone will let me. Really, I work with the United Nations as well as a delegate for the event that they do annually for women's rights and life for women. If you want to know anything about that, let me know as well. Anyone can be a delegate for it. And the reason why I do this session is because I've been a woman in tech myself for the last 15 years. And over the years, I've noticed that there's a lack of more women joining the industry, but also there's been women that have joined the industry and they have left the industry. And that's even more concerning to me than the lack of women joining, to be honest. And I wanted to talk about specifically the 9 things that have come up or do come up when having conversations with women about being in the tech industry or joining the tech industry. There's a lot of misconceptions out there, and I think we can all talk about what they are, how we can dispel them, but also talk about why women leave and what we can do about that. So a disclaimer on this session, there is a lot of generalized statements, right? So this won't apply to all women. Things that I talk about referring to women, they will apply to men as well in a lot of cases. But primarily women tend to be affected by the topics we will cover today. And that's really all it is that us women tend to be more affected by them. Any questions before I start talking about the 9 myths? And feel free to use the Q&A as well for any questions or things that you want to add to the discussion as I go along. All right, let's go into it. Some myths are very quick, some myths are a bit longer. I have to warn you, some are a rant. So, first of all, there's some common myths, and this has come up in LinkedIn a while back, that everyone believes about the IT industry, regardless whether you're a man, woman, or otherwise. So the first one is that in order to work in STEM, in technology, in IT, you have to have a degree to work in tech. Absolute nonsense, right? Some of the best people I know that work in our industry do not have a degree. In tech or otherwise, or, I don't have a degree in computer science, for example, but you don't need to have a degree at all in anything. Some of the best people actually have practical experience in our industries and in Microsoft Biz Apps as well. Be good at math to work in tech? Thank God no, because I'm horrible at math at times. My brain short circuits, so you don't need to be a mathematical whiz to work in tech. There are some exceptions to this if you're working in some areas of technology or data science where maths definitely may come into play, but you do not need to be a mathematician in order to work in tech. And also, tech jobs are not just for young people, and this is something that many people believe, that they can't switch careers later on in life to work in tech because, they are past a certain age. Again, that's not a thing. Anyone can learn, and if you think you can learn new things, you can change into any career at any point in your life. The other thing is as well, and this is related to this as well, it takes years to learn the necessary skills to work in tech. Some people say, oh, I'm not sure I want to start looking into the Power Platform, or I'm not sure I'm going to look into the Biz Apps or CE because it's going to take me so long to learn it. All of it, yes, it will take a very long time to learn it, but no one knows all of it. We all know and specialize in certain parts of the platform, and we come together and create wonderful things. And that's the whole great thing about the community as well. So sometimes it does take some time, but you do not need to have spent 5 years learning about something in order to actually work in a sector. Thankfully, that doesn't apply. Otherwise, anyone finishing school or university or going into an apprenticeship program would have lost before they started. So that's not the thing either. So these are some common myths. And then the final one, which is also the first myth we'll look at properly for women, is that tech jobs are only for men. They never have been, and they are not. I don't really know where this has come from. I don't know why there's this misconception that the tech industry is full of men and only men. It's not a case. So let's talk a little bit about the 9 myths, because this is the first one. The first one is tech is for men. I don't understand where this has come from, because my favorite example of this is, the first computer programmer was Ada Lovelace, a woman in a purple frock, right? Mostly, I'm told. It wasn't a man. The first person to get a PhD in computer science was a lady called Mary Kenneth Keller. She wasn't only a woman, she was a nun. I don't even know how that works, but she was a nun, and she got her PhD in computer science because she loved computer science. There's so many examples of great women in history. And when I do a longer version of this presentation, I give about 9 or 10 examples of women historically that have contributed into technology, and some of which, worked for NASA, for example. And I don't really understand it. Not only do I not understand it, talking about the second myth as well, which is the lack of role models. A lot of women say, I don't see myself in the industry. I don't see women in the industry doing well or being in positions of responsibility or power. And I only see men. Everywhere I look, I see just men doing things, not women. I don't see myself. Although in some cases that can be true, the reality is that if you actually look around, you will find role models. But you need to obviously look out for role models, but they are there. And my favorite example of most recent elements of this is, if you look at, for example, if you're looking to be in the Microsoft community and you wanted to look at a role model, the best place to look at is MVPs. Now, granted, there's about 12% of MVPs in the UK that are women, but that's still quite a lot of people. I think it's about 75 of them, if I'm not mistaken, that are women. And that's more than enough role models for someone to go and interact with them or message them or comment and say, hey, I would love to be involved in this sector. Can you please talk to me about it? And 9 times out of 10, they will never say no, right? They will always engage. There's an enormous amount of women even within the Microsoft side of things that are very much willing to engage with people and talk about women in tech and what it's like. So I think there are a lot of role models, but for some reason, people don't seem to perceive that there are. The other thing about these two is that men, and this is very important to say, men do not want tech or any other industry, for that matter, to be just men, because diversity is good for everybody. They want a diverse and inclusive workplace for everyone. So it's not as if anyone is working against this. They also would love to see more diversity in general in the industry, not just in terms of gender, but generally. So we need to consider as well that it's something that is a misconception, but it is not true. I don't know if anyone has any stories around these 2 myths before we continue, or anything they want to share around this, if anyone has experienced this or has thought it previously.
Not particularly, but I can say I've been sat around a table of male MVPs, if they weren't then, they are now, who were sort of having this conversation about how do we get more women into the kind of architect space, and they actually felt responsible for blocking that in the organisation that they worked for. They thought, if we don't move, there's no room for the women to come up into our position. So it was just to comment that I think there's a lot of the men in our sector that feel that way too. That
they are blocking women from progressing because they exist. That's a whole other level of problem. Okay.
It was meant with good intention, I think.
We'll come back to that one. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so there is that element of guilt as well, potentially. I think what we're catching on there is that they feel as if this role could go to a woman, but it's gone to a man. I think the only thing I would say about that is positive discrimination is still discrimination. I don't know a single woman that would want to be offered anything, let alone a job, because they're a woman. And I've been in the receiving end of it as well, where I was told, oh, you're a woman in tech, would you like to come and work for us? I was like, that's not the thing. Like, you should be getting in touch for skills, experience, and knowledge, not because of my gender. That's just crazy. So I don't agree with quotas for gender and things like that. But that's a whole different conversation to be had. Very interested to hear what Cheryl has to say.
Yeah, I kind of disagree, because I think women don't want to be given a seat at the table just because they're a woman. But I do think that women should be encouraged to be developed, or given the opportunity to be developed, so that they earn that seat at the table, right? And I think that's what we need more of, is not just ticking a box, but actually have, and it is discrimination. I agree that word is it. The word is discrimination, but actually I think behind that is the ethos that we need to do more to encourage exactly what you were talking about, those women who, for whatever reason, drop away from the sector, right? Because they don't see a future for themselves, or, you know, don't see that good career being available to them. That's just my 5 penny worth.
No, definitely, and that's definitely the number. Spoilers. That's definitely the number one reason why they leave is the lack of career progression. 100%. Yeah. Thank you for that. So let's move on to myth number 3, which is it's all about code. So a lot of women feel like if you want to go into a career in IT or technology, you would have to learn how to code and be a developer. And that is a very short-sighted view of the variety of roles in IT and tech. There is a huge amount of roles that are not related to coding. Project management is a huge element of any IT project, right? We need project managers to make sure everything is going to plan. That doesn't need coding skills. UX, UI, which is extremely important, doesn't need coding skills necessarily. There's so many Scrum Masters, even AI to a certain extent, you don't necessarily need coding skills. Yes, some elements of it are important in some areas, but if anything, you know, particularly for Microsoft, we are moving away from custom code in general. It's all about low code, no code, and that is great because it makes it more accessible to people that don't have coding skills. But also, we shouldn't have the misconception that you need to be able to code to be part of the sector. You don't even need to code to be a consultant. We have functional consultants that do not have coding skills, and we've got, you know, technical consultants that do love to code, and people that want to be developers and people that don't, and that's absolutely fine. They all have an enormous amount to offer. So coding, if you're into it, that's great. If you're not into it, like me, that's also great. It won't hold you back unless you want to obviously be a developer. Then you may need to try and love writing code. But it's something that I think a lot of people are afraid of the idea of it. They've never tried to do it. They just think, oh, it sounds complicated. It looks difficult. So I won't even try to do it. So the only thing I would say is everyone has to give it a go, because you might find that you love it. And if you give it a go and it's just, you know, you get it, but it's just not for you, then that's fine. But I think we should encourage particularly younger generations to have a go at it, because I feel like there's this intrinsic fear of coding, and actually coding can be a lot of fun. Any comments on this one before we go on to number 4?
I was just thinking as you were speaking then, we've got 2 of the girls in our office here doing the Power Up programme. One's our marketing assistant, Izzy, who she does all the hard work on this. And Callie, who's one of our new consultants, recruitment consultant. And I've been talking this stuff for ages, and actually watching, I was quite envious watching Izzy yesterday, just working through the task that she's doing at the end of that programme, and it's for non-techies. So I'd recommend that, actually, having seen it sort of firsthand, somebody else going through that as a non-techie person or non-coder.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we had the conversation, Sarah, didn't we, about the definition of non-techie, and why do people think that they are non-techie if they don't write code or if they're not a developer, when actually they are very, very technical people. So that's definitely something that, yeah, we need to get away from calling our, you know, those that do not code. We need to get away from this feeling of I'm not a techie. You know,
we do have that conversation, because I'm terrible. I call myself a non-techie, and I wouldn't have the confidence to call myself a techie. I think that's why, but you know, my friends don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about work, so there must be something technical in there.
We concluded that it depends on who you know that you compare yourself to, and I think the majority of people will know someone that is extremely technically savvy, and therefore they compare themselves to that person. They say, well, compared to them, I'm not technical. But it's like, well, okay, but if you compare yourself to someone that doesn't work, to a lawyer, are you more technical than them? Chances are, if you're working with Microsoft Biz Apps, you probably are very technical. So it's, we definitely need to get away from it. And I've been guilty in the past of saying, the first presentation I ever did for the community was about using a Canvas app with customer voice to get surveys real time. And I literally started my introduction with, I am not technical, however, I have built this. And then someone in the audience was like, their face, they didn't even have to say anything. Their face was just angry. And I realized at that moment that it's not a thing. We should not be saying this about ourselves. We are all technical people. Right, rant over. Let's move on. So lack of skills. So this is something to do with our feeling that sometimes we do not have the right skills to go into a career in tech if we're switching careers, or that generally we're not going to be good at it because we're not good at the skills that are needed to be good in technology. And the reality around this is that there is a lot of, in my opinion, the soft skills that we women tend to have sometimes and be better at than men in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, they are sometimes more important than the hard skills and the kind of the technical knowledge. When looking at people, joining my team, yes, sure, I will look at their experience and their background, but I will also look at what, are they good at communicating? Can they empathize? Are they willing to learn new things? How good at they are at their organization and timekeeping and elaborating on things and understanding other people. Those things tend to matter a lot more because you can't necessarily teach soft skills as easily as you can hard skills. So it's important. And in some cases, there are soft skills that just can't teach someone in some cases. So it's more important, and we tend to put a lot more emphasis, I think, on the hard skills and the soft skills. And there's this, the famous statistic of, women will not apply for a position unless they tick all of the boxes on the job application, whereas men will be like, I can probably do 50% of this, can probably talk about the rest, and they will just give it a go, and we don't. And we have this feeling that if we don't have all of the hard skills, that we should we can't be good at technology, so we should stay out of the industry because we're not going to be good at it. In reality, it's rubbish. We have a lot of skills, and there's so many transferable skills from other industries as well. If you've worked in another industry looking to go into tech, I guarantee you have so many skills that you can use in a new role. I don't know if anyone has any examples of their most important skill they feel is needed. I think for me, it's continuous learning at the moment because there's so much new stuff all the time. I feel like we have to have that soft skill of wanting to be, constantly curious. Shri.
Hi. Yeah, I think it's also don't have the fear to speak up. So that imposter syndrome, which generally sets in when you're outnumbered in gender, that's something you constantly have to fight. It's probably not a skill, but more like a life hack. Like, don't be scared to voice out what you think because it may be true and nobody else is thinking of it. That is a skill. Be confident, I guess.
Definitely, we'll talk about imposter syndrome because it is one of the myths. Although not exactly a myth, more of a problem. But yeah, no, that's very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
So with lack of skills, oh, sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. No, I was just going to say also kind of ties into that whole non-techie piece, but also sort of understanding that if you're perhaps a bit behind in the technical skills to your peers, that often that means that you can sort of listen and understand a bit more rather than diving straight into the technical solution. I find that, it's almost like the more technical skills you get, you start solutionizing really quickly. So I think that can actually be a really good thing, having a bit less of the technical skills.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I think there was one person I used to work with in the past, and she was brilliant at listening at conversations that were happening. She was a junior member of the team. She was brilliant at listening at conversations. And if someone spoke about something she didn't know or understand, she would go up to them afterwards and say, I'm trying to improve my learning on this. Will you spend half an hour with me and tell me more about it and explain it to me? And she's the only person I've ever known to have actually gone up and said, I don't know this. Will you tell me more about it? And it's such a great way to do it, and not enough people do that. So yeah, and I took a leaf out of the book because I think that's brilliant to do. So definitely.
Yeah, I think a challenge with the skills piece too can be obviously like that you might have some different skills to say your male colleagues, but I think the challenge can be is when, particularly if you're working on your own, like the sole female in an all-male team, is actually having those skills valued and recognized across the team. I think that can be where the challenge is. It's like you yourself might know you can bring them to the table, but when it feels like you're an outlier, I guess, and those skills aren't used across the team, it can be a bit tricky.
Yeah, definitely. Carmen.
I just thought I'd share. I've read the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, and it's amazing because as a female, sometimes we go in and we want to know everything to the T, and we're never going to be there, right? And men have more confidence in actually selling their abilities. So sometimes we think we lack skills, but actually we have the skills. It's just that we need to build our confidence in them. So if you haven't read that Lean In book, then definitely recommend it. It was a great read.
Yeah, definitely. It is a great one. Invisible Women is the other one as well. That's a great book as well. Thank you for that. We should start a book club. Lack of interest is the next myth, number 5. So there is this assumption mainly by other people that women would not be interested in technology or a particular topic or something that is predominantly considered as male in our society, and therefore they assume we won't be interested, and they don't come and talk to us about something that could also be a leadership position, right? We're probably not interested in advancing our career. We want to stay at home and bake cookies or whatever. So lack of interest is not a thing. We're interested. It's interesting. It's all very interesting. I genuinely try always to find more things to say about this, but this is kind of it. I have nothing else to say. We move on. We're interested. People need to stop assuming that we're not. Tech's fun. Imposter syndrome. So we have already touched on this because it inevitably comes up. I saw a great quote the other day that said, "Lack of confidence kills more dreams than lack of competence ever will." And I thought that was great because that is definitely true. And this affects, I think, everybody. Men are also very much affected by this, I think. Every human being on the planet will have this feeling of, oh, everyone else is better than me. I'm a fraud. I don't know what I'm doing. If you have the time, have a look on I think it was the New York Times or the New Yorker actually, that provided an article by the 2 psychologists that came up with the term imposter syndrome. They called it the imposter phenomenon, and they were women that noticed this in other women. And they wrote a very good article explaining how they noticed it and how it came about, and the fact that it was hugely affecting more women than men, basically. I think the main thing about this is to try and notice it in other people. If other people, and particularly girls, particularly women, tell you something that suggests imposter syndrome is behind their thinking, it's calling that out and giving them that vote of confidence and saying to them, no, you can do this. It's a question of whether you want to do this. You have the capability and the experience. Don't, self-reject, thinking that you're not good enough. You need to give it a try. We all suffer this, and some in varying degrees. I think it's a scale. Some people are completely debilitated by it, and other people can manage it, and other people have very, very little of it, but everyone will have some element of this. I personally had this come up massively when I saw the job description for head of delivery. When I was going for it, I saw the job description and I got in touch with the person that sent to me. I was like, I think this is bad for me. This is not good for me. I can't do this. I don't think this is right after all. And she came back to me and she said, no, this is fine. You'll be fine. Just do your interview. You'll be fine. And I had that moment where, I saw that list and I thought, I don't have experience in this and that. And does that mean that I actually am not, the right person for it? And I talk about these things, right? And I say it's bad, do not do it. But it will creep up on you at times, and you do need that supporter or a mentor or a sponsor in your life to say to you, you're good, you've got this, keep going. And sometimes that's all it takes. We do need to, so this isn't as much a myth, but we just need to make sure that because it affects more women than men, to actually look out for it and try and make sure that people are not avoiding joining the industry purely because they feel like they're not good enough, because that's just heartbreaking. So we need to make sure that we nip that in the bud where we see it. Does anybody have any imposter syndrome stories or questions?
I'd say my biggest one was my first kind of official role in tech was an IT trainer. And back before I got my confidence, I would just script every single word and I never got good feedback. It was clearly so wooden up, so robotic, and just no empathy, no chance to kind of shape what I was doing to the class's reactions. And then as soon as I scrapped that, I realized that actually so much of it is just having a bit of banter with the audience and some empathy, and everything was so much better from then on. And when I did get into tech, that helped me so much because I had so much, I kind of had that bank of empathy. I understood where the pain points were for the customer, what kind of challenges were we solving with these apps, what are the real problems on the front line, rather than coming at it thinking, well, this is the bit of code I want to flex today. This is the new technical skill that I want to apply.
Yeah, definitely.
The other thing is, it's so constantly evolving world. No one person knows everything. So there's always something, in fact, most of the thing that you don't know. But one thing you need to keep in mind is that the client who have hired you know less than you. So you're still at a strong position because they trust you for what you know.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
also, you know where to look for information if there is any question that you cannot answer. So there's no need to be afraid. You can always, get back. You're not sort of on a place where you answer it right now, otherwise you're fired. You're never in that situation. So you can always check back and then get back to the client.
Yeah, definitely.
And that also shows the human aspect of it, that you're being human being, you don't know it all, and you're vulnerable as well, which actually works in your favor in terms of building better rapport.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I couldn't support that more. And I think the main thing as well is to remember that, yeah, exactly, we're all human, and you don't need to know everything. You just need to know someone who does. I think someone said it to me a while back. So you just need to know where to go to ask the question. You don't need to know the answers yourself. And I think it's something about being a leader and a manager as well. You don't need to know everything your team knows. You just need to have a team that knows everything and support them and manage them. So yeah, definitely true. And I can confirm I am a real human, even though my initials are AI. I have not, my program has not suggested otherwise. There you go. Right, so we move on to family work balance. So this is a very important one. There is this misconception that working in technology and in IT, you have really extremely long hours, you don't have a life, all you do is work, and you don't have the chance to look after your family or look after your parents or whatever other commitment you may have outside of work, that somehow the industry is completely incompatible with that. Obviously, since the pandemic, I think generally flexible working has become a lot more widely accepted, which is a great thing. I particularly believe that in our industry, we are very much accepting of the fact that we just want the work done. We don't care how it works, it gets done. It's not a case of, wanting people to be in the office 5 days a week. Definitely not for the partner I work for. It's more a case of, you fit the other commitments you have as you need to in your week, and there is support from other people there. So I don't really believe that this is such an issue. It may have been historically, potentially, but I definitely not come across any recent instances where this has actually been true, thankfully. I think there is a lot of support across a lot of companies within the industry for family work balance, but work-life balance in general, not just family. I think realistically we need to call it out if we do see it, and I think people would vote with their feet as well if their employer was not supportive of their life and their family. I would imagine that people would be making a decision based on that. We do have to remember, because there will be workaholics, as always, we do have to remember what we do this for. And I think at the end of the day, it is all for our family to a certain extent, one way or another. So we do need to make sure that we support anyone that we work with or works for us, in that sense, making sure that they have that support. And I'm a mental health advocate as well. So for me, this kind of support is all about making sure that we have the right things in place to make sure people do feel supported. And I think part of the reason why some women leave the industry is because sometimes these things are not there. So we'll talk about that in that section in a second. Does anybody have any stories or things they want to share around family and life work balance before we talk about number 8?
I just wanted to add, as someone who's got a view on the Microsoft partner employment market and end users as well, I totally agree on the Microsoft partner. I don't think I could work with a client that demanded you in the office a certain amount of days per week, because people won't do it. And they're very, I have to arrange interviews around school runs and things like that for hiring managers. So I see it through most partners. But I do think there's a bit of an old-fashioned difference within the end user market. And I also see it being used as a financial services company that I'm aware of at the minute. They've just they've taken all their staff parking spaces off them and demanded everyone come back in 5 days per week when they were taken in on a hybrid basis. And I think that's to get rid of people, so that people vote with their feet and walk out. So that is happening in other areas. So it's just a point really to make. There is a lot of that around. So it's nice to see in the Microsoft space, but I agree, you have to set your own guardrails at home to make sure you're not working too long. Give yourself that control as well.
Yeah, definitely. We have to remember that if we work late or we work a lot and we miss certain family events, you know, our manager in 10 years' time won't remember, but our family will probably remember us missing those things and not being there. So it's, you know, it hits home if you think about it. So yeah, it's important. Okay, number 8, an attractive culture, the C word. So culture can be a very difficult thing to define, but what we're talking about here is really the fact that a lot of women imagine that they will be working in an office or in a team full of men that, you know, log on and talk about the football, and, you know, she's not interested, and it's just difficult to create those networks and connections. What I can tell you is there is a lot more secret Taylor Swift fans than you would have expected. I personally am one, but also, you know, do not assume this for other people as well. Some people have very interesting hobbies. So there is this misconception, you know, that in a lot of cases, because there is a high proportion of males in the tech industry, that there is this culture is kind of unattractive to women, that women are not going to be able to find, to feel welcome. And I think the best example someone gave me of this recently was, you know, it's like looking at the description of a gym class and you decide to join it and you open the door and it's all men, or if you're a man, it's all women, and you just feel not welcome, and you just feel like, you know, like that environment is not for you. The reality is that's not the case. I don't think there's been, and we'll talk about number 9, which is the hostile work environment itself. I don't think that is that there is a culture generally for only mostly male-dominated, you know, hobbies, so to speak. There is a wide diversity already in people and personalities and interests. That means that if a woman is in the sector, there will be other women. It's not that it will be all men. It's very unlikely that it will be 100% all men. But even if there is, I think we should try and assume as well, because it will be true, that men can talk about a lot of different things. You know, it's not just that. And of course, you know, at the moment, you know, the Euros are on, football is on the mind. That's fine, but there will be lots of different diverse topics that will be talked about. So I think there is actually the culture is very much broad and wide, and I don't think it's unattractive at all. I think it's you know, you can have various conversations about various topics. I'm interested to see whether anyone on this call has had an experience of a culture that was unattractive. You know, men talking about, I don't know, video games all the time or something. I don't know. No? Oh, good. Okay, good. Glad. And the last one is really the very far side of this, which is a hostile work environment. And this is where we get into, you know, situations of women actually feeling unwanted or actually being discriminated against, something that not only should not be happening, but there's also legal implications for. So there is a lot of situations where women unfortunately feel that they will not be supported, and they will not be, you know, either their religious beliefs or anything to do with their gender or any kind of behavior that will be kind of put up with when it shouldn't be. I don't know a single partner within the Microsoft ecosystem that doesn't have a zero tolerance policy on these things. I would like to feel like these things are not happening. In reality, I imagine, unfortunately, in some cases, this might happen. Again, it's the same for me as with some of the other ones on here. If we see it, we need to call it out and make sure that it's not the case, because if it's happening to one person, that's enough for it to need to stop happening. You don't need it to be happening to multiple people. So if we do see, and it comes with the unattractive culture, if you do see, something happening there, which is like alienating the majority of others, or even just one person, call it out and say, hey, look, let's stop that, or let's talk about something else, because we do need to support women in this. I mean, I'm scared to ask this, but does anyone have any comments they want to make on this? Any horror stories that they feel they should share? Because you should, if you feel you want to. Okay, few. Good. You'll be surprised. There can be some cases. So if all of these myths are dispelled and women actually join the industry, unfortunately, the issue that we mainly have is that they will then leave. And there is a research company called the Tech Talent Charter that looks at specifically the different movements within our sector, particularly to do with women. They look at diversity, and the statistics that they get out of this are actually pretty horrifying. According to them, and I'll show you this very quickly here, from their last report, they suggested that 1 in 3 women are planning to leave. 1 in 4 leaves for a job in the non-tech sector. Only 1 in 6 who have been in their job for more than a year are planning to stay. This goes on and on and on. I'm not going to go through all 8, but do have a look at the website, because it is, it's difficult reading, but it's good reading. And basically, the main elements of this come down to the following. We have attrition, and we have attrition because of the following reasons. The very first one, I think we've covered already to a certain extent. We do not see career progression for women as much as they would like. We are extremely ambitious, and so we should be. Everyone should be, if they so wish. And the number one reason why women leave the sector is because they're not being given the opportunity to progress. And I think it was Cheryl, I think you mentioned the fact that there needs to be that support for women to have a chance to progress. And that is absolutely the first thing. The second one is pay and remuneration. There is a pay gap, no two ways about it. I had an experience of this a while back where I realized I was underpaid, 10K to another colleague of mine that was doing exactly the same job as me, literally exactly the same job as me. There was no other difference. It's very, very, very difficult when you realize how bad it can get. And when I raised it at the time, the director of that company said, look, we give people the salary they ask for when they walk in the door. If you ask for a lower salary than someone else, that's what it's going to be like. I mean, that's a poor excuse, right? But at the end of the day, companies are here to increase their revenues and keep their costs as low as they can. We need to keep that in mind, but we also need to make sure that we are keeping tabs on what we should be getting paid in our sector and make sure that we are being fairly remunerated for the jobs that we do. A lot of women are not, and therefore they leave the sector because they feel like, there is unfairness there, and there is. The next one is the cost of living crisis in childcare. So these two are related. So the fact that there is a lot of costs constantly in our life, it has been going up in recent years, but also we cannot forget that childcare particularly is problematic purely because women tend to get paid less than men. So for families where it's a man and a woman, there will be one of them that gets paid less potentially. And it's always, childcare costs are really expensive. My daughter's 4, she's about to start school in September, and I cannot wait to not have a nursery bill, because having her in childcare 5 days a week so I can work full time is costing more than my mortgage. I think it's like £1,700 a month. My mortgage is like £1,500 a month. It's insane amounts of money. And we need to talk about that, because women that have not had children yet do not realize just how expensive childcare can be. If you haven't looked into it, it's horrible. So, and this is with the government subsidy of 15 free hours a week or whatever it is. Like this is after that, right? So it's a lot of cost. So a lot of women feel like there is no point staying in a job at all, let alone in a job in IT, because they are not going to be able, they will be paying, if anything, not making actually enough money to pay for childcare. It's a massive problem, at least in the UK particularly. The next one is work-life balance. So we've already spoken about this. In some cases, they feel like the work-life balance isn't right. And the only thing I can say on that is we have to be better at asking for what we want and not assuming we have to put up with what is being asked of us. If it doesn't fit into our job and our schedule and what we have to do, we need to say, look, can I come in a bit later because I have to do drop-offs? Can I leave earlier because I have to do a pickup? And this isn't just mothers, and nothing annoys me more than when people say mothers. It's parents, right? It's dads, moms too. Like, it's not just moms. So we do need to ask for this. And the other one is need for flexibility. Comes hand in hand really with the work-life balance to a certain extent. They do not get enough flexibility for what they need. To Sarah's example, in financial services in particular, it's definitely gone backwards. And because they need that flexibility, they leave the sector. And then company culture. They need to feel welcome. If there isn't any particular policy the company has for making women feel welcome, it's not organically going to happen. So there needs to be some thought into making women welcome in the company. Before I talk about what we can do about these wonderful issues, is there any stories or comments anyone wanted to make? Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, because I've been through my daughter, father and I split when she was 18 months old. So I kind of did that whole chunk of childcare as a single parent. All of those things, I had to work full time, even though there was childcare costs. So everything on that slide there is so important. You've got to feel comfortable doing school things that you need to do, and you miss out. There was times I didn't even know what classroom my daughter was in when I'd go to the school because work had to come first so I could pay the bills. But if I was on more money, it would have been easier. So all of those things are so important. I think they go hand in hand as parents.
Yeah, definitely. And at the end of the day, you have a happier employee working for you if you accommodate their life, and they will value their role a bit more. And well, they will value their employer more, not necessarily their role, but their employer more, if they are being understanding and empathetic as well. Rachel.
Yeah, I just sort of wanted to get your thoughts on about career progression. And this isn't just for women, for everyone in the industry, really. But I see sort of a challenge that some people have is that, if you don't want to move into, say, management and people management in tech, and you just want to be really good at what you do technically, sometimes that can feel like there's a bit of I guess like a ceiling that you can hit in terms of pay and if you're not necessarily changing roles, but you're getting better at what you do. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on sort of how you can overcome that, or like what we could be doing to
definitely
to deal with that.
It's a great question as well. So I think there is this misconception that in order to get paid more, we have to get promoted. And in order to get paid more, we don't have to get promoted. We just need to ask to be paid more and have more skills and more experience, and say, I would like you to recognize the fact that I have these skills and this experience. There is, and it's something that managers sometimes get wrong as well. They feel like if someone asks them for more money, they have to promote them, which is crazy, and then you end up with structures in companies where you have a lot of senior people that are not actually at the same level, because it all depends on what kind of salaries they've asked for. And it breaks down the whole thing. Yeah. It's absolutely fine to get to a position and feel like that's it for you. You don't want to go any further because you're just not interested, right? It's not in your career aspirations, but you have other career aspirations. You can move horizontally, right? Across. You don't always have to move up. You don't have to move at all. If you are, I remember once there was a story of someone that, I think they were a principal consultant, and they were called about a solution architect position. And he said, no, sorry, I'm not interested. I've peaked. And the recruiter was like, what do you mean? He said, I'm happy. I've got a good salary. I have enough time to see my kids. I'm here for my family. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I don't want to be a solution architect. Thanks. Like, I'm good. And of course, from a recruiter perspective, he was probably a bit disappointed, but it's important to be honest as well and say, we don't all have to aspire to be CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies, right? It's okay. We don't have to. We just need to find what makes us happy. And if we get to the point where we've met our career aspirations and our job is our job and we do other things outside of it, great. Salary is a different thing. And I mean, salary is a minefield. I'm sure Sarah has lots of salary stories as a recruiter, but, you know, it's one of those things where I think we need to be a little bit more open, because there is massive disparity in salaries potentially in some cases. So salaries is a little bit different, but you don't need to be striving to get promoted. And I think if an employer said to you that you need to, you know, we can't give you a high salary because you will need to be promoted, I would question that and debate it back to them and say, you know, do you realize what this is going to lead to? You know, a structure that makes no sense, you know, and it's about recognizing your skills and your experience, not the position you're at.
Yeah, no, cool. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. Does anybody disagree with that? Okay, cool. Awesome. So finally, a couple of things on the stages of life. Different things will matter to people at different stages of their life. And the survey that the Talent Charter did was that, what it found was that if you're 18 to 25, chances are work-life balance matters more for you. If you're a little bit older, up to 34, you may be more interested in pay and remuneration. A little bit older than that, up to 44, work-life balance comes back again. And if you're up to 54, career progression is probably very much on your mind. And if you're older than that, chances are you're looking at non-salary benefits in general, potentially because you're looking at retiring at some point later on in life. So we do need to consider, when trying to address the reasons why women leave tech, that they're not all going to matter at the same degree, and different people will care about different things. So it's very important when having women in the team to understand what, and actually any person in the team, understanding what's important to them, what matters to them, what do they value, because there's no point saying to someone, you know, I'm going to give you pizza every Friday, if really what they want is to have Friday afternoon off to spend with their kids. So it's important to actually understand that different people in the team will need different support and different things. And it's making sure that we know what is important to each person. And for you as an individual to make sure that that's communicated to your manager, so your manager knows what is important to you so they can support you. So what can we do to stop women from leaving? Because we're really good for the industry. So the first one for me is encourage. So the young generation, we need to make sure they are not bogged down by the myths of what working in tech is like. So making STEM an option from a young age and encouraging them to try and code, do something. And schools are very good at this at the moment, making sure that technology is accessible to children, providing access to skills, training and learning resources and opportunities to learn and grow. Those two things are separate, because someone may want to upskill in something or get training in something. They may want to generally learn and grow, but those two things might be different. For someone, they might want to go into another position, or they might want to get promoted. For someone else, it might be expanding their skills and their experience. We need to make sure that we are encouraging everyone to do this, but particularly women, if they so wish, given that career progression is very much the number one thing that we are lacking. So making sure that they are given those opportunities. Elaborating. So part of this is about all of us telling our story as women in tech, what we do, how we do it, busting those myths, talking about what it's really like to work in technology, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and being honest. There's a lot of people that say, oh, you know, I was just lucky. And I'm like, no one's lucky. You know, what did you do? What was horrible? How did you fight it? Who helped you? Be honest about what it was like. And I think it comes back to, you know, Franco's point about being human. Talk to people and tell them the honest truth. Don't just make it sound like it was easy, because then they will feel horrible about the fact that they're struggling, and they will feel like they can't get support for struggling. So we all need to get better at elaborating as women in tech and telling our stories. And also for men, talking about how they're helping women in tech, and making sure that they are, you know, showing the ways that in which that they are, you know, dealing with the imposter syndrome, telling them that they can and they should do it and things like that. So we need to be talking about this from all sides. And finally, enabling people. So flexible working policies, activities within core working hours. I get extremely irritated when someone sends me a meeting before 9 o'clock or after 5, and I decline it most of the time unless I really have to be there. And the team knows not to put meetings in outside of core working hours, or if someone is unavailable, or if we know someone has pickup at 3:15, don't put a meeting in. Support for new parents. So when someone is coming back, we've all been there. Sleep deprivation for me killed me. I was struggling. I could not handle my life. It's important to know that you have that support there, and adjustments can be made to your workload, or you get a little bit more support because it is an adjustment in your life. And we need to make sure that there is that understanding and acknowledgement of that, and making sure that that is in place so that women don't feel like they cannot be mothers and workers. They need to know that they have that support to be both. And then mentor and buddy systems. I think this is one of the main ones. Women particularly benefit from this because of the imposter syndrome, because of the feeling of having the lack of skills and things like that. Having a mentor to bounce ideas off of, and having a buddy as well at work that will help you and support you, that may be a little bit further down in their career path than you, can really help give you that sounding board. And if you don't have someone like that, and you know someone in the Microsoft community or outside of it that you feel would be great to have as that, I would encourage you to reach out and ask them whether they would be interested to do that, because I can't imagine anyone, asking and me saying no, for example. And I think that's the case for most people. We love helping others. It's where we get our sense of value. So reach out to anyone you feel would be very good for you to get that from, and don't self-reject. Don't think they'll say no and not do it. Just ask. That is it from me. Thank you very much for listening, and I trust you have found this all useful, and thank you for sharing your stories as well. Is there anything anyone would like to ask? And I think Chica has put a message. You have a 12-year-old daughter who will likely have a career in the world of IT tech. Lovely. What's your thoughts on what the state of tech industry will be for women in 10 years from now, compared with the current state? What a great question. I honestly find it very difficult to imagine what it will be like in 10 years, primarily because I don't even think the jobs and the roles within the technology industry that we will have in 10 years even exist right now. So it's very difficult to know what the world will be like for women in tech. My hope is that because we're talking about these things, and because there is a greater awareness that we need to do more for diversity in general, not just for gender, just a more diverse industry, my hope is that as the years go by, we will see more and more participation, and there will be hopefully the support for those things we talked about, of what we can do. There will be more support for these things. In reality, what the world of work will look at in 10 years, I don't know. AI is kind of blowing this open. Who knows? I don't know. I've got no idea. I just hope it will be better from a diversity and inclusion perspective than it is now. But very glad your daughter is considering a career in IT. That's what we want. We want it to be considered. Franco has 4 daughters. My condolences. That's a lot to deal with. I mean, the 4 kids, not that they're daughters, right? I'm not being sexist. I'm just saying 4 kids is a lot. Every one of them has made a decent side hustle. Oh, cool. Okay. Does the tax man know about this? The youngest at the time was 9. Smashed through the tax. Yeah, cool. That's what we want. Strong, empowered women that can take on the world. Good on you. You should get a t-shirt that says, I have 4 daughters. You can't frighten me. I think someone has worn that in the community, actually. It may have been you. But yeah, it's how have you found being a father to 4 girls?
It definitely took an adjustment, because back in the day when anyone asked if I've had kids when I grow up, I'm like, yeah, I'll go with 11 lads. We'll have a homemade soccer team. So surprise by surprise. But yeah, it's been awesome. And I think what's got them interested in tech in some way or another is just, of all the random things, just seeing the freedom of being able to work from everywhere and pick up opportunities everywhere, and see this awesome community that we've got. Not so much the excitement of working in IT itself.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you for that. Any other questions?
Not so much a question. I just wanted to say this was a brilliant session, Areti. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
This discussion
100%.
we need to be having more of, right? Thank you.
It's
So
great.
I
And
do
I
have
think,
closing remarks, I think.
yeah, no, well, for me, I need to remember not to refer to myself as not a techie. Point taken. But no, it's kind of allowing people to think some of these things, you know, that kind of defensive. That's my takeaway anyway, is that kind of defensive. It was easy, it wasn't that hard. Or shying away from opportunity because it seems a little bit scary or it's a man's world. I think what you kind of talked about today is just really enabling for people who might need that little boost that it's okay. So thank you for that. And thanks for everyone who's come and participated as well. It's made it a really good session.
Definitely. Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Okay, so thanks for joining. Thanks for everyone who had the cameras on in particular. And yeah, we'll see you again soon, Areti. We've got something else booked in, haven't we?
We have AI adoption. I will be talking about the perils of adopting AI in organizations and the fact that it's not easy. And if you don't have a plan, it's not going to go well. So we'll talk about that in September, I think. If I remember well.
I can't wait. But yeah, thanks again, everybody. Have a great evening and see you all again soon.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Areti. Bye.
Thank you.